to The Balancing Act. Now here's your hosts, Jamie Wonko and Joe Vitale.
Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I am here today. I'm physically here. I don't know if I'm here, but here we go. I am Jamie Wonko. I'm here with my friend and co-host, and I guess he was just getting a little thirsty.
Yeah, I need the caffeine today. I'm on 2 cups of coffee and a second Diet Coke for the day, which is very odd for me.
Wow.
Gotta start watching my blood pressure. That'll happen eventually. It's always great to,
Joseph Vitale, everybody.
yeah, it's always good to be like going to the doctor and they're like, oh, your blood pressure is like on the low side of high, and then you're like, I teach middle school, and they're like, oh, that explains it. So and they just kind of move on.
What's the low side of high?
I don't know, like 140 over 70 something. It's supposed to be like 120 over whatever. I'm like, yeah, I'm exercising, I'm running, I got a low resting heart rate, but I teach middle school. It's never ending.
I'm gonna have a brag. It's the only healthy thing about me. Whoops.
I love that.
Is my blood pressure.
Good for you.
If that goes, I'm in big trouble.
Of
Because it's
course.
the only thing I got.
Nice. Well,
do you ever think of a happy place?
Oh, all the time.
When you get your blood pressure taken?
I do.
Oh, you do? And it doesn't work?
I have anxiety. It just makes me nervous. Like,
All
I got the
right.
pressure. Ooh, Tracy scares me. All right. Okay.
I have
So,
microphone anxiety today. I'm sorry. I'm a little fidgety.
that is-
We have a
we
guest.
do. Yes, we do. We have a special
Yay.
guest today.
And we're just so excited because, as we've said before, we've joked before, if you have a DM, we gonna slide into it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, that is correct.
So you want to tell us a little bit about
I do. Let's bring her in, and then we'll start our little introduction. Hello, Jessica Hawk, or better known on all the socials at My Teacher Face. Thank you very much for joining us today. We are so excited to have you here on the Balancing Act.
Well, hello, and thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I know we cast a wide net, and one of the reasons, first of all, love your content.
Thank you.
Second of all, one of the reasons that I gravitated to have this conversation with you today is because you are in the midst of a victory tour. Is that correct?
It is. It is such a bizarre feeling to be at the end of my teaching career.
Yes, I dig. As my daughter, who's a huge, are you a Taylor Swift fan as well? Is that where the T-shirt came in? Is that where the T-shirt came in?
Which T-shirt?
The T-shirt where every month you cross off a month.
Oh, that's a whole different story. But yes,
okay.
I do love Taylor Swift, but that's a whole different story.
Got it. No, I remember that every month I see on you cross off the month.
Yes.
Where it's you're getting down to the end.
Yeah. Well, one of my friends said to me last year, next year is your final tour. And as soon as she said that, I said, oh my goodness, it's like a concert T-shirt, all the places I've been and what's going on. So I thought, I'm going to make Dr. I's final tour. And I have the year, and on the back, I have all the places that I've taught and every month of the school year. And a kid crosses it off on the last day of each month.
I love that. That's awesome. And congratulations on the, I'm sure like most of us, there's no rest for the weary. You'll figure out something to do next or something you're passionate about. Who knows? Or no?
I hope you don't. I hope you don't.
You hope so. I hope you don't too.
Just relax, at least for, 2 years.
Yes.
Or more. More. Yeah.
Good.
There is a little consternation about, what's going to happen, but things happen to fall into place. So I'll just calm down for a little bit, which is not the easiest thing for me to do.
I think we're all rowing. We all have an oar rowing in the same boat for that one. Absolutely. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into education? We know you are a fellow New Jerseyan. So we're very happy to have a fellow New Jersey person on our podcast. So you can tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're teaching, how you got into the profession, stuff like that.
Sure. Well, I think I got into the profession because I've always been bossy and I always wanted to be in charge of people or things. I was never one of those little girls who played house with dolls. I set up business meetings with my stuffed animals, very disgruntled that I put them in those seats and gave them lectures. And I also have educators and ministers and nurses in my family. So I come from it honestly. And I went to University of Maryland, started my first year of teaching in Lanham, Maryland. go Terps. And I started in Lanham, Maryland, 8th grade. But the interesting thing about the 8th grade where I started was many of the kids in my school were expelled from DC schools because we were right over the border. So my first year of teaching, I had many 15-year-old 8th graders who were going through 8th grade the third time.
Oh, wow.
And if they didn't pass this third time, then they would drop out. So I had a baptism of fire. I will have to say, if you've seen the movie Freedom Writers, it was pretty much like that. They hated me in the beginning. And then by the end of the year, I was no teacher like the teacher in Freedom Writers at all. But we did bond at the end. And I decided I could not go back to that school a second year. So I moved back to New Jersey. And then I was subbed for a while, did summer school, did all of the things that people do when they're trying to find a job. And then I found my job at Delsea Regional High School, and I've been there since 1995.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
It is.
And you're teaching primarily English, correct?
I do. I have language arts. I have taught sophomores for 27 years. I teach senior AP English, senior basic skills, and I also teach a junior senior film analysis class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what does senior basic skills look like?
So these are the kids who need to pass a state test or a PSAT or an ASVAB in order to graduate. And so by the time I get them senior year, they haven't passed any of those. And I need to try to get them to pass a PSAT or an ASVAB or an AccuPlacer. And then if they don't pass any of that, we have a special review assessment, which is called the portfolio assessment. And I need to get them through that.
Got it. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's a process.
It sounds like it.
That's a lot of different classes that you're teaching.
Very much.
I usually have 4 preps.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
This year I have 3 because I said in my last year, can I have a little break?
Good for you. Film analysis. That seems interesting to be teaching. I've done some, digital creation and movie filmmaking and technology stuff as an elective. But what's that? That seems different than, teaching English, of course.
Right.
So how did you get into teaching a course like that?
So we have a TV video class, which teaches all about how to use the camera and how to film things. So I teach a film analysis class called Reading the Movies. So instead of reading a book, we're actually reading the movie. We're doing character analysis. We're looking at camera shots, angles, and movements. We're talking about dialogue and Foley and sound effects. We're talking about music and the mood that it creates. So we do that over the course of about 20 movies a semester. It's a half-year class. And this year I have 3 sections of it. It's usually full.
So what's your top 3 movies that you watch with the kids that they're like?
Tell you, the top 3 that the kids love, and I'm so happy: Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, fantastic.
Goodfellas, and The Help.
I have never seen The Help. I have never seen that movie. You're shocked now. I've never seen that one. I have to watch that one. But
Get to it. It's on Hulu.
Shawshank Redemption is absolutely one of my favorite films ever, and it's only based on a short story of Stephen King's.
Correct.
It's not even like a full complete book like of his.
Right.
Such a well done movie. I want to take that course.
Yeah, me too. That sounds great.
That sounds great.
I usually have 60 to 75 kids a semester, so I get about 150 kids a year who take it, which is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I got to ask about the handle at my teacher face. I mean, I need to know where the story comes from because
Can
we
I
all
take a guess? Wait, can I guess before you tell us?
Yeah.
That doesn't have anything to do with like the Gaga, like my teacher face, my no. Okay.
Oh, no.
Because when I see you online, that's what's playing in my head.
Well, no, that's going to play in my head, so thank you.
I love that. That's nice. Can't be my teacher face. Okay.
That could be a video.
This is what happens on the podcast.
Right.
So yeah, I'd love to know where that name comes from.
Yeah.
So
Sure. So when about 10 years into my career, I was the first person who monitored internal suspension room each day, and I had to set the tone. And with my personality, it's bizarre to think that I'd be the one that was the disciplinarian that set the tone. So when I did that, I basically sat there and stared at the kids to let them know this was not a place to joke around. And the way that I did that was doing this.
that's really good. That's what a certain
That's really good.
And
That's
I
what a
don't break. I don't break. And I would get to the point where kids would put their books and their folders in front of their faces. And so then one of my students showed me Instagram. This was years and years and years ago. And I said, well, you know what? I could do that face and maybe make a meme out of it. So I started doing that. And it caught on very lightly. And then Vine came along. I don't know if
Oh
you
yeah,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, I loved
and
Vine.
so I said, oh, I'm doing still pictures. I can do 6-second videos because I was looking at some of the things that the kids were producing. And I'm like, no. So I started doing Vines. And then one of my kids told me about TikTok. And I saw some of the TikToks and I was like, next, let's go.
I really enjoy. I'm a fan of your content, but some of the things that are always both endearing and funny to me is I think you posted one the other day where it was like different ways you say goodbye to your seniors. And I was like, you were like, get out, and I was like, that's fantastic.
And I have new kids this semester, so they don't know me that well. And not all the kids know I have a TikTok or follow my TikTok. So one day I just said, get out. And one girl turned around, shocked, and so I smiled at her, and I'm like, "It's good."
Yeah, no, that's great. And the one and where we'll put a link to it in our YouTube video for sure. There was the link to one of your videos where you're like when you're on spring break and there's all the different personalities that you're talking to. I'm like, that is literally me. The one that wants to clean under the refrigerator, but the one that wants to sit on the couch and watch movies and eat popcorn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
We all have lofty goals at the beginning of spring break, but
yes, we do.
crumble instantly.
Yes, they do. So we're all on a journey. Jamie and I have been teaching for 25 years. Are we? No, I'm 25. You're how many again? How many was it?
I'm much younger.
You're much
20
younger.
23. 23 years.
23 minutes. So, we often are mentoring young teachers. We're often talking to them about, things that they can be doing in their classroom. We're sometimes tasked to do that by our building principals. Hey, we'd like you to mentor or lead this PLC or do these different things. And one of the things we've been talking about and that we'd like to talk with you about is advice that we have for the new teacher, for the emerging teacher on how they can set better boundaries for themselves, whether it be with their administrators, with parents, with students in the classroom, and what advice we might have. And I'd love for you to maybe kick it off and give us a piece of advice that you maybe would give to some of our younger listeners who are looking to set better boundaries for themselves in their careers.
It's quite a difficult thing for those of us who have been in the profession a long time to reconcile, because I've been in it 32 years, you are in your 20 years, but there used to be a time where no matter what they asked, you did it. You wanted to keep that job. So if somebody told me sweep the floors, I would have swept the floors. There was one year I had 7 preps. I had 3 classes in one period. Sure, that's fine. We need you to coach mock trial. Sure, that's fine. I kept saying, sure, we need you to lead this professional development initiative. Great. Do I get prep time? No. Okay. We were the okay, I'll do it generation, because we were so ingrained to throw yourself into everything, volunteer at everything, go to every event. And in a lot of ways, that's wonderful because the kids get to see us in a different capacity. They get to see us chaperoning the prom. They get to see us go to their sporting events. They get to see us in various classes. I don't know if that holds water anymore. Because what I'm finding now is that so many of the young teachers that I work with have second and sometimes third jobs. So for them to do 8 extra things for their one main job is not feasible anymore, because they have to leave and go to their second job. And on the weekend, they have their third job. So I always tell young teachers now, look at the calendar, look at what is coming up in the year, and go to maybe one football game so kids can see you, administrators can see you. Go to, maybe the prom or the homecoming dance. Your kids want to see you there. They want to know that you're involved. But this whole thing of doing 8 other things for no extra pay is going by the wayside. Teachers don't realize their value. Teachers don't realize the monetary hourly value that they give to their school. And it's a tough thing for us to ask because everybody says, you're not in it for the income, you're in it for the outcome. Yes, but we also need to live and eat and
Right.
pay rent.
Yeah, we've had a number of conversations with some, we're at a different point in our lives with our salary, where we are on on our salary guide and stuff like that. But some of our younger teachers, we see the exact same thing, that they're working as bartenders on the weekends. That most of us might have some kind of side hustle or side job where
Yep.
they're doing something. There we have one group of guys that works at a local restaurant. They like park cars. They're part of the
Valet.
valet. Yeah.
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 So I think that's an interesting perspective that honestly I never really thought of. Like, okay, maybe people are saying no because it's like, well, I can't stay after and do that extra thing because I have to go work my second job. I have to go do aftercare, or I have to go, tutor this student or do this thing, and I literally don't have the time in order to do it.
They don't. And I
Yeah,
tell them right now, the most important thing for them is to get a mastery of their content. So doing these other things and spending time after school doing these other things for free might not be the best use of their time, when they could be maybe looking for materials that can help them with the lesson the next day. And our prep time, as you all know, goes by so quickly, and rarely is it just you. If we don't lock our door, close our blind, turn off our lights, there's always somebody popping by like, hey, what's going on? So I tell them to be very protective of their free time and quote unquote free time in school so they can use it for their planning. They can use it to develop their lessons. They can use it to hone their craft because after school, their time is not their own.
yeah,
Yeah, and we're in a building where it's so overcrowded that there is no opportunity to be in a room by yourself. You're always
Oh,
somewhere with 8 or 9 other people at any given time. So people are very respectful of one another, and a lot of headphones and different things like that. But still, it's definitely. I came from a building where I had my room. It was mine. I could do exactly that, shut the blinds, lock the door. And so it's been the last couple of years. It's a very, very different environment when you can't be alone.
yeah.
sure.
That's
Yeah.
been more recent. I've kind of that I think that setting boundaries, I think, is important sometimes to step away from that environment, like you were saying, like teachers to find a little corner of I mean, I've literally gone and worked like sitting in our cafeteria actually has a class in it.
Mhm.
But they're on the stage. It's a theater performance class, and I
Right.
talked to the teacher beforehand. I said, hey, can I like sit in the back in the dark and like just grade stuff? Like, I'm not going to say a word. I just need a place where like I can put headphones on and not be, hey, can you help me do, can I just, no. And I also would like to say, as we have this discussion in regards to setting boundaries, I am awful at it. And it is something that I am constantly working on myself, where I want to get better at it too. So some of the things that you're talking about, I may actually take away and put in my own little toolbox,
Mhm.
because it's something that we all struggle with and that we worked on.
Sure,
Um,
it's a lot different for us who have been in the education world for a long time because that's how we were trained. Teacher colleges back in the day were like, get involved in everything, be at everything, because we were so eager to show that we were part of the school community so that we could get tenure and keep our job. And now young people realize there's a teacher shortage.
Right.
So if things don't work out here, either they're not going to go back to that school of their own volition or they're going to get out of education altogether, which unfortunately is what I've been seeing a lot of. People who teach for 2 or 3 years, they see the demands that are on teachers in the education world today. They see the microscope they're under by the community, by some administrators. And they said, this is not how I can go through the next 30 years. And in New Jersey, these kids now have to work until they're 65.
Yeah. That's actually, I know you're Jamie's laughing because like I feel the exact same way.
Well,
I
I
look
have
at
to say, I always laugh. We had a former student of ours who came and interviewed, and he got the job. So we, of course, you look at him, you're like, oh, you're 11 now, you're a grown up man, and you have this job. And so we had our department meeting, and he comes in, and everybody welcome. Wow, it's so great, congratulations. And somebody, this real funny guy, yelled out like, "You only got 87 more years to go."
was that what,
I
was
mean,
that when you were at Avenel? That was when you were at Avenel?
yeah,
Yeah, there you
yes,
go.
yes. And it
Um,
is true. It's like,
Mhm.
wow, that's a lot,
Can
you
yeah,
you
think
I,
you'd
imagine
want to
being
stay.
23 and thinking you have 43 years ahead of you?
what's interesting to me, Jess, is that a lot of the teachers that I've talked with that are younger in the profession, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to do this till I'm 65 years old, and they're in their mid to early 20s, and they're just like, yeah, I know I'm not going to stay in, like, and it's both disheartening and also a commentary on what's happening in the profession, both financially, legislatively. Like we are like you were saying, the culture has always been, oh, you have to do the extra thing, you have to, to keep your job, to stay in the good graces of the, of the administration. And now, like you were saying, that's not the case anymore. But I struggle with, kids, quote unquote, younger teachers that like don't ever volunteer for anything. um and I also can now, I maybe a lot of them have second, third jobs that they're working and trying to juggle.
Yes.
So,
And so I have to tell you, we struggle with it too. Some of the veteran teachers at our school, we show up to everything because that's what we've always done. It's what we've always known. And over the past 10 years, especially, fewer and fewer new teachers are coming to the events and they're
yep.
doing things. And so, it's very easy to get your shorts in a knot and be like, these whippersnappers, like, what are they doing? But then once I talk to a lot of the younger teachers, I realized that they are literally bartending all weekend. Some of them want head coaching jobs or assistant coaching jobs. So they volunteer at clinics all weekend and after school and all summer for no pay,
Yeah.
just so they can have that chance for advancement. And I'm like, that's why we never see you here.
Yeah. It's eye
And
opening.
unfortunately, I think they're missing out on the best part of what we get to do and seeing the kids in that way. And, I think it really makes you feel a greater sense of belonging and what you're doing and your purpose. And I don't know, I always found those little extras are what helps me keep going. So I wonder if sometimes because they're not having the time or availability to do it, they're also losing some of their drive and passion to stay because they're not having those connections or those opportunities to kind of really connect with the
Right.
kids.
And I think that is a valid point because you don't have those same memories. Like if you think back to teaching in the 90s or early 2000s, we would have float building, we would have all these things that you really got to know the kids. And now to this day, I'm still friends with my first kids who are in their 40s. So those bonds have been created forever. I don't know if that's happening now or if
No.
that's something that's just going by the wayside. We do have what's called a unit lunch at my school, which is really good because everybody in the whole school has lunch at the same time. There's three main areas for kids to eat, but teachers have a 27-minute lunch and then a 27-minute either office hours or duty that they have to go to. So I have office hours 3 days a week. Kids can come and eat in my room if they need to make up a test. So some of these teachers are finding that bonding time during the unit lunchtime. So that helps, but it's never that the kids wanted to see me at the prom. The kids want me to see
See
them.
them. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing we try to tell younger people. You don't have to dress up, you don't have to do anything. The kids don't want to see you. They want you to make a fuss over them. They
Mhm.
need that validation. They want that from you. And so trying to flip the script and say, even if you could just pass through, just see your kids and see them dressed up and ready to go.
Yeah.
I
That's,
agree with that
ev-
completely.
yeah, really. And even like I watch, my own children be involved with things at school and the friendships that they make. You see, like there's this whole camaraderie between the teachers that they talk to and the people that they spend time with, whether it be for coaching or the school play or stuff like that. It really or band. They really get a connection with all these different teachers that they see on a regular basis, and that's the people that they I'm not just saying that those are the only ones they have respect for, but that they have respect for them and they know that they're working hard and that they're there for them. And if they're in their classes, they might, sit up a little taller and make sure that the assignments get handed in because they're like, yeah, I know that person's putting forth the extra effort for me, because that's the other byproduct that we get for this too. When we show that we care, we get students that also care more as well.
True.
I at least that's something that I've always believed in. So trying to go to the sporting event or trying to go to the school play or whatever it is, being involved in the things that they're doing, or like I have one kid who's really into rockets and he goes and he launches rockets. And I said, okay, well, just bring your phone in tomorrow morning, like before homeroom. Let me see the launches. And he looked at me like, I'm like, yeah, I want to see what you did. Show me the rockets. Show me what happened.
And it
Like,
can be that easy.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
literally that easy. And now he wants to show me and talk about the rocket cities build. And like, yeah, it's awesome. Like, I don't know what he's doing, but he's building rockets and he goes to a club and he launches them in a park, and the old ones with the little thing and the parachute and all that stuff. Yeah, that's what he's doing. And he loves doing it. He wants to work in aerospace, and that's something he's passionate about.
That's great.
I'm like, good for you. It's exciting to see them in that light. I've also
I have a
Go ahead,
question.
James.
It's not about rockets, though. Is that okay?
No, it's totally fine. It's out of this world.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So we talk a lot about balancing life, work, family responsibilities, obligations. And so I saw recently one of your videos, and I don't know if it was a new one or if it was just, something you reposted. And it was about you choosing not to have children.
Yes.
And so I just wondered, as someone who, right, there had to be a little bit of that, but you work with kids. What do you mean you don't want them, right? Or maybe was it you work with kids, now you don't want them?
Well, my child-free by choice content is really what got me noticed on TikTok originally, even before my teacher content, because I knew my whole life I never had whatever that maternal gene is. I do not have it. And I come from many generations where there are child-free women by choice, 4 generations back in my family. So I think we're all missing it somewhere. And I just always knew that. But as a person in getting married in the 1990s, nobody talked about it.
Mhm.
It was not really an option. People were clutching their pearls that I was getting married and said, no, I don't want to have children. Neither does my husband. My ex-husband didn't want to have kids either. And we just found each other very luckily and talked about it honestly. And so I did have early in my career when I was young, I started at 23. I did have some people say, well, you don't have kids, so you don't know what it's like X, Y, and Z. And I had to remind people that I am a living, breathing human being with emotions, thoughts, and feelings. I am also a daughter, a sister. I have feelings. I am a human. I'm not a cyborg. And no, I don't understand that maternal bond, but I don't want to be discounted for all emotions and all connections because I don't have children.
Yeah, and that can happen. So, well, I mean, I think people can be so judgmental in so many different directions.
Yeah.
So sometimes it makes them, like, oh, maybe I always think of like, are they really thinking like, maybe I shouldn't have had children? What a brave choice. And so it's a lot easier to say like, oh, come on, you should, or, whatever that might be. My mom has a very good friend who, they went to elementary school together, and there's a whole group of them and they always get together every year. And she is married, and her husband decided like, we are not having children. And so at some point along the years, like that she had a shirt made or she found it and it said, oops, I forgot to have kids. and she would wear it. And and that, I mean, my parents are almost 80, but so that I don't know if that, you said you had generations back that weren't having kids, but I know that was a little bit more rare, I guess, in their circle, or at the time. But I think that content is extremely, I don't know if those kinds of things cross over, but I like that quite a bit.
And I talk about it very openly, and I always have. And I said, you only know when I talk to kids in school, I said, I know this was the right choice for me. You will make the right choice for you. And if you want to have kids, I want you to have children. People who want to be parents will make the best parents. I said, but it's something that you have to decide on your own. You can't have pressure from your family. You don't owe children to anybody else. And it's not something you try. I always tell them, if you're on the
True.
fence, a human life is not something you try because there's no return policy. And I said, we have far too many, unfortunately, we've all seen in our scope kids who have been categorically neglected and ignored by their families. And it's horrifying. And I just say to my kids all the time, my choice was right for me. You have to make the choice that's right for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know as as a dad, having children did change my outlook on things in my teaching. Um, and I think that that was good for me.
Mhm.
Okay. But some people maybe have a more, like, I know you said like, oh, well, I don't have the maternal gene, but I'm sure some of that comes out in the type of teacher that you are in the classroom. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think that that has influence over the decisions that you make, the activities that you do, how you deal with children.
Mhm.
Definitely has to have some kind of, that comes out in various ways.
I am
Um,
protective of my students, especially, girls who will come to me with boyfriend issues. I'm like, give me that phone and I'm writing the breakup.
oh,
But yeah, there is some of that. But you know what really opened my eyes to that other side without having kids was when my nieces and nephews were getting into fifth and sixth grade and they were in accelerated classes. And I saw on the weekends they had to leave the family functions because they had so much homework. They had so much that they had to do, and they were disgruntled and they were reluctant. And I had to really reevaluate my view of work on the weekends and work on holidays and work, for at home. And I give no homework now, none. And I teach AP literature and composition. And people are like, how can you? Well, I have a 95% passing rate for the past 4 years. And you don't have to bog your kids down with 8 million tasks. I always say, I'd rather have depth than breadth. So many people say, my kids read 20 books this year in AP Lit. And I'm like, no, they didn't. They did not
no,
read 20
no.
books. They talked to their friends about it, or they spark noted it, or they watched a video about it. But I tell my kids, you have 2 major works outside of class, you have 3 major works with me. You can do 5. And that's it. So I really had to reevaluate, why am I giving this burden outside of class where it's not a controlled environment? Many of my kids have jobs, many of them bounce from house to house. Is it effective work if I'm not there to help them and to answer things? And my answer was no when I reflected on it. So people are like, you don't give homework in AP? No. You know when they're going to do it? When they're in the parking lot waiting to come in the morning, or during the unit lunch, or they're going to ask their friends what was on there. And it's just not a good measure of what they can do.
Mhm.
My opinion, totally my opinion.
No, I don't think that's the wrong opinion. I've gotten away from, like, I've done it in various ways. I've given like a homework assignment on a Monday and it's due on Friday, and you budget your time as to when it's going to get done to
Yeah.
try and work on time management, organization, executive function, that kind of stuff. I've reserved, Jamie, we've talked about this how many times over the last couple of days. I've, like, I give assignments in class. Okay, what we don't finish in class, we have to finish for homework,
Yes.
and then and then, like, that's
You know what
also,
happens in middle school when you assign something on a Monday, and you have them do it on Friday? You have some students who don't do it, and then
Mhm.
you have other students who freak out and spend 3 hours doing it on Monday.
And she's experienced the same thing. And the assignment that I give them, by the way, is not like,
I don't know what
yeah,
your work is.
yeah.
I'm actually
I
saying that
know,
as a
I know
mom,
you, and I know
because
you've seen it. Yeah.
my own children are the ones who freak out and sit for 4.5 hours in one night to do the homework,
Well,
because then they're not gonna sleep worrying that they have an assignment to do, that it's just their own self-imposed, I wanna have everything, a certain
yeah.
way, and I'm very much like that. I mean, clearly it's hereditary. I'm very much like that. I don't like to have a lot of things hanging over my head. I am not a procrastinator. And so the homework thing, I agree with you, Jessica. I reevaluated. We had a principal years ago who was getting his doctorate, and he did a ton of like article sending to us and just reading and research and so much about how really homework is not beneficial, and just sold it in such a way that it was the first time I can remember this. Gosh, I mean, this probably has to be at least 15 years ago at this point, where I had never really looked at it that way before, and it makes so much sense
Makes so much
to
sense.
me. But yeah,
But it's not how we were trained. It's
no,
not how we
No.
were, I was trained on how to dress. I was trained on, if you find yourself accidentally patting a kid on the back, always move your hand in an upward direction. Homework is essential to reinforce the skills. I went to Catholic school and was taught by nuns. So I have a lot of that ingrained in me, where it was expected to come home, get a snack, sit at the dining room table for 4 hours and do my work. And was that effective? No, it was a fear tactic.
and we also work in I mean, not that there's not deeply religious pockets all over the place of different religions, but we happen to have a lot of students. I think our school is like 72% Asian. So between our Hindu population, our Islamic population, there's also a lot of responsibility for them for
Yes.
prayer.
Yes.
And it
And
is
it's
a
Ramadan.
I mean, and right. And so right now it's Ramadan. Outside of that, though, there is a lot of
Sure.
education happening for them. So many of them do not have time to do whatever the homework might be for school, because they're involved in such deep religious studies.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
one of my other jobs is tutoring kids in Saudi Arabia. I'm a college counselor for them, top tier students in the senior classes across the kingdom who are trying to get into Ivy League schools. And when I meet with them, they are a bundle of nerves, because there is so much pressure on them from the family, from the community, from the religious community, to perform at such a level at all times.
I think
Yeah.
that's another boundary that
Yeah.
I think when we talk about how teachers can set better boundaries, that's something to definitely think about as like what you're assigning. Is it purposeful? Is it like, assigning however many units of IXL that is, or whatever diagnostic we're using that is, and everybody's covering their ears because like I had a friend of mine who reached out to me the other day, and his only message to me, hadn't heard from him in like a week, and his only message to me was effing IXL.
Yeah.
He's like, that's it. And I tried to
We're
explain to him,
3,000.
I tried to explain to him two things. Number one, and I'm going to say this, and I know that there's teachers in the school district that I work in that might hear this. We're not using it right. It's a diagnostic. It's not meant to be for a classwork grade. And
Mhm.
students getting a completion grade of 100 does not prove mastery on anything. But they also, the way it's scored is you get to a 90, and then you got to get 10 in a row correct. And then you get 100. Yay. And I can't tell you how many times I sat with my daughter, who's a very bright kid, and she works hard, and it would be like 95, 96, 97, get it wrong, go back down to an 89, and then get all the go all the way back up, and then get it wrong, then all the way back up. And I'm like I would close the computer and be like, walk away, the tears are enough, walk away. Like, I
Right.
know she knows the material.
Right.
It's things like that. Like, that's not purposeful,
It's
that's not intentional, that's not giving them anything that's gonna like have them deeply think about content or anything like that. So but you're right, that is setting up, like, teachers need to also look at like, okay, that's a boundary that I can set, not just for myself but for my students, so they don't understand
Right.
that outside of here they should be doing 2, 3, 4 hours worth of work.
Right.
Because and Jamie, I've heard you talk about your kids coming home, and I'm like, that is way too much for a sixth grader. High achieving
I
kids.
say fail. I do. I said, well, fail. Like, oh, don't say fail. And he's like, well, you could fail. And they, like, I won't be mad. I won't be upset. Dad won't be upset. You'll be okay. The sun will rise. It's like, it's just because they put so much pressure on themselves to, sort of, and then I think sometimes certain things with education are going, everyone wants to say what's wrong and what's happening. And I also think, when I was in kindergarten, we played, right? We had a kitchen and we played, and then we learned how to read by the middle to end of first grade. And now, now we're asking them to do all of these things younger and younger and younger. So even, this pressure filled, like a lot of kids, by the time they're 15 and 16, they're done with it. They've,
Right.
Or they're like in this pressure cooker situation of getting into college and doing all of these other things. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, it's all
It's
right.
a lot. And you don't really get to know kids when you're just going in bell to bell. And I know teachers who do that and they do it very well. That's fine. It's never been my style.
Yeah.
They set the boundary of you have to be in on time, you have to do this, this is when it ends and this is when. For me, I need those few minutes for my kids to talk and yap. Anybody who's been a teacher through COVID, when I hear talking and noise now, I'm like, "Oh, thank goodness you're
Yeah.
talking to each other." So I let that go on. I jump in on some of the conversations. If you were to walk by my classroom in the first 5 minutes, you'd say, "What is going on in there?" That conversation among peers with me needs to happen. You're building skills. We're learning things about each other. And so some teachers will have that definitive line, "We start at the bell." I'm not that person. If the seniors, especially this time of year, say to me, "Is there any way we can push the lesson off?" And I'll be like, "Give me your case. Who is your best litigator right now?"
Yeah.
And I will, because it's a time where we'll play Jeopardy, general trivia on the board, and we'll remember that and have fun. And then the next day, they're ready to go.
Yeah. You need those little brain breaks every once in a while, which, try to do with like different creative projects and things like that to get people thinking in a different way. I know, Jamie, you do the creations where students are able to choose what direction they're going to go in with
Yeah.
teaching the material and trying to give creative things that students can do. You have high school seniors, so it's a little different. We have
Well, I have eighth
we
grade.
have you have eighth grade. I have seventh graders. They're
Yeah.
they're scrambled eggs.
But
Every day is a different.
my eighth graders are starting to, the end of the year they have, promotion, and then they have their trips, and so they're starting to do a lot of that. Like now they're kind of like, starting to date a little bit, and they're getting into, what's going on. And it is so true what you said. So I teach 4 classes in a row, and so I have always called standing outside your door, being on the porch, it's just one of my favorite things to do, of just watching them walk by. And I know everyone says like you're supposed to be on your post. I like to think of it more as like I'm just on the porch looking around the neighborhood, and so it's just kind of like now I have kids that I don't even have. I'm like, oh, hello, how are you today? Just because I'm on my porch, and so now when I come in from the porch, some of them are like at different tables, and they're, and I love it because it is completely back to how things were,
Mhm.
how it should be. I always say to them, like, come on, be in the human world with all the people, look around and appreciate and enjoy each other and talk to each other. And, so like, it's like those little things that I think are so important. But yeah, there are people who are never going to be able to,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Everybody has to sit down and everybody's in their
And
spot.
when we talk about setting boundaries too, I mean, one of your most recent projects, James, the Women's History Month thing. I think was it Women's History Month or maybe it was Black History Month,
Yeah.
where you had the students like you were like, well, they always go like, hey, did you hear that this one? And did you hear
Oh,
that?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
she had them like,
I
okay,
called it
fine,
the
great.
Tell Me Project
It was
because
just-
they're always whispering,
yeah,
and I'm like, I know I'm old and I can't hear, but I see you and I know you're talking to each other. What are you talking about? So I called it the Tell Me Project, and I required them to learn about 3 different influential Black women, and then they had to go around and tell other people. So they had to tell 3 adults and they had to tell 6 other students, peers, whatever it was. And they were like, oh, I had to talk to people. I was like, well, yeah.
yeah, you do that all day long. So
Love that.
it's leveraging that.
Yeah.
I think that, I had a little issue with saying no this week. I'm asked to cover classes sometimes, and there was one that I covered, and I was like, no, I'm putting that on my no-fly list. Like, I have to set a boundary. I don't when I'm done covering that particular class, I don't feel good about, like, I was like, no. I was like, I have to say no. And I didn't say it in an abrupt way. I just said, I'm gonna put that on my no-fly list.
Yeah.
That was my term. And I have two things on a no-fly list: that particular class and doing any kind of phys ed class in a classroom. Like, oh, we need you to cover a phys ed class. Absolutely not. I will do anything else. I'll cover bathroom. I'll cover music classes. I'll do whatever. But there's and the look I got, because I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again in the future. If you could not ask me, I would appreciate it. And it was like, I was like, yeah, I'm setting a boundary. I'm saying no. And I don't think people are willing enough to be like, I think it's more of a old school approach of like, well, how could you say no? Like, we're supposed to just say yes to everything, but we're not.
You can't.
Yeah.
We can't. That's the
can't.
whole point. Like, when I know that and I have anxiety, I've diagnosed OCD. I have things that I use to get me through that. But when I know that, like, when I'm done with the class, that I'm now not going into my best mindset to teach for the rest of the day, and that's going to affect me, I'm going to say no, because I know the effect it's going to have on the students that are in my classroom. They're not going to get the best me. So therefore, I have to set a boundary for myself to say, I can't do that for the reasons that I gave you.
Yeah.
Right.
So I
You
think
can do anything, but you can't do everything.
let's put that on
One
a
of my
t-shirt.
favorites. That's
That should
one
be-
of my favorites.
There's a lot of like making t-shirts today. There's like the tour t-shirt, and there's the
Yeah,
whole
we're copycats. We
Maybe
want to
that'll be
copy.
my retirement job. Get a Cricut and make t-shirts.
Well, speaking of that, you can check out Jess is my teacher face Teachers Pay Teacher store, where you can get t-shirt templates. Okay.
Teachers Pay Teachers now having a connection to my Venmo is, I don't know why. It used to be if you could just pay by credit card. I'm like, oh, I don't know. And now I'm like, Venmo. I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm banking on people thinking it's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, people do. There's so much stuff that's out there.
Yeah.
And there are a few content creators that we've had on already who also use their platform to create their Teachers Pay Teacher stores and doing kind of what you're doing now, right? You're launching you're going to launch yours soon. And what are some of the things that you're looking? I don't want to put you on the spot because we only briefly talked about this. What are you thinking of putting on there? Is this going to be like your retirement slush fund? Is that what's going to happen with this
I
month?
have so many slush funds going on right now. I am just trying to gather income from everywhere. One of the things that people always watch in my videos is behind me, I have a word of the day board with magnetic letters, and I change that every day.
Yeah.
And people are always asking what these words are. So for each test each month, I make a quiz. But I make 3 versions of the quiz because I have kids sitting at tables and sitting next to each other. So they have to move in their tables. And I am going to offer my word of the day list with the part of speech color coded based on the parts of speech.
No, that's awesome.
And I'll offer 3 versions of the test for that month, 3 of the answer keys, and then a final list of the 140 words in this packet. And then the final test, where the kids they'll get 5 random words and they have to create a paragraph using them as the correct part of speech. So on each of my tests, it's fill in the blank for 15 and the remaining 5 words they have to use in a paragraph.
That's
That's
awesome.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of development. And so making it for Teachers Pay Teachers, like, you really have to sit and make sure there are no mistakes, because heaven forbid there's a mistake, 1 star, so I'm just really taking my time going over absolutely everything to make sure that it's up to snuff. Then I have some tone exercises for AP teachers. I want to do some syntax exercises. So there's a lot of stuff that I've created over the years that I haven't thought was marketable, but people want to borrow my stuff. So I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, let me give this a shot.
What I've gotten some great advice, and what I remember again, Joseph Ellis, who was the God bless him, he passed away a couple years ago, was the professor at TCNJ that oversaw the teaching program, and there were certain things he said that always stuck in my mind, and one of them was, if it's good and it's not yours, steal it.
Sure.
And he didn't mean that in a derogatory way. He just said
No.
we need to be as resource. Those are one of the things like that I came away with from my teaching career.
You don't reinvent the wheel. You just put a shiny hubcap on it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Shiny hubcaps.
Yep.
Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for wanting to join us today and being here. I think that your advice is wonderful. If you do not follow Jess on the socials, listeners, we're fighting. So you need to make sure that you do that because the content is amazing. And we wish you the very, very best as you continue the end of your victory tour.
Yeah. We're 50% happy for you and 50% jealous of you.
Yes, we're 50%. No, I think it's more like
I get it.
I think it's more like 50 happy, 45% jealous, and 5% angry that it's not us. I think that there's a little bit that's like, God damn it.
Yeah.
That's a fair fraction.
Yeah, I think and good for me for doing math because I don't normally. That's not my strong suit.
It's well deserved. Well deserved.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. It's
Well,
been for talking to you. I hope this does help some young teachers who are looking to find out how they can set boundaries and maybe have a long and illustrious career.
Very good. I think that is wonderful advice and a hope for anyone that's young in the profession and hopefully going to stick with it.
Yeah.
So as always, Jamie, I appreciate you.
Joe, Jessica, I appreciate both of you.
I appreciate you, Jessica. This is our thing. This is what we do. You know.
Yeah. Now should we have a Jessica and say like, get out?
Get out.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
You're welcome. Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye.
Listening to the Balancing Act podcast. Have a topic we should discuss? Drop us a line at thebalancingactpod@gmail.com.